Our distinguished guests tonight are renowned artists who are dedicated to awakening the power of imagination as a way to heal the self and the world. All three are gifted storytellers, as well as listeners, mentors, as well as lifelong seekers, activists in the cause of social change. Working individually and with others, their influence in the culture has been generous and sustaining. I'm going to give you the sparest of bios of our guests: the multi-talented John Densmore, the original and founding member of the musical group The Doors, a member of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the author of the autobiography Riders on the Storm, and also The Doors Unhinged, Jim Morrison's Legacy Goes on Trial, both bestsellers. And Luis J. Rodriguez, Poet Laureate of Los Angeles. Luis has written books of poetry, children's literature, fiction, and nonfiction. He's co-founder of Tia Chucha Cultural Center and Bookstore and founding editor of Tia Chucha's Press. Of his two memoirs, the latest, It Calls You Back, an odyssey through love, addiction, revolutions, and healing, and his other memoir, Always Running, La Vida Loca, Gang Days in LA, is one of the most checked out and one of the most stolen books in the LA library system.
There you go.
Quite a distinction. And Michael Meade, storyteller, author, scholar of mythology, anthropology, and psychology. Michael is the founder of the Mosaic Multicultural Foundation and the author of Fate and Destiny, The Two Agreements of the Soul, and Why the World Doesn't End, and The Water of Life, Initiation and Tempering of the Soul. When things fall apart or become polarized in the extreme, Michael wrote in an essay, it's soul that's missing. History is not outside people. History is made in the depths of the human soul. If we want the world to change, the healing of culture and greater balance in nature, it has to start inside the human soul. So with that in mind, please enjoy Burning Voices, Stories That Fuel Us, and please enjoy the evening. Thank you.
I want to share this poem about the homelessness because I feel it very deeply. And I think it's something we should all think about. Not so much that, they're homeless and just feel bad for them. Feel bad for us, that there shouldn't be any homeless. And whenever there's a homeless person, we're all being driven away from our home. Every road should come to this end, a place called home. When you don't have one, the expanse of sky is your roof. The vacant lots and sidewalks, your living room. Every city, your city. When you speak for the country. In the wrinkled faces and the sun-scarred eyes, Mother Earth calls us to fury. Every child without a home is everyone's child. The daily murders go unanswered. To die of cold in sunny California. To starve in New York City, the restaurant capital of the world. To have no coat on the Broadway of coats. The crimes pile up as high as the mountains of grain that are warehoused and stored away from those who need it. A mother's child is taken away for neglect because she can't pay rent and eat at the same time. Children born of a labor of love are condemned for the lack of labor. War veterans crawl through city veins, once vital, are heroes, now discarded. Their every road should come to this end, a place called home.
So I'm real happy to be in my hometown library that I love. They gave me this button, reading is sexy. And I'm real happy to be surrounded by two friends of many years, and more importantly, two mentors and teachers for me. So I was going to read this poem, only I can't find my friggin' reading glasses. Aha! This is John Trudell, a wonderful Native American activist poet who crossed over to the Happy Hunting Grounds just a few months ago. So This is from my book. It's a poem that starts the chapter, and I'm going to read a couple little paragraphs and then the poem. I battled the restless early morning traffic, honking of horns along the freeway route to the courthouse, recalling this beautiful poem. It was written by a friend, John Trudell, a Native American visionary activist and poet. One does not sell the earth the people walk upon. Now there's an elder, I muse, as I consider the Iroquois nation, which is run by a council of grandmothers. If anyone ever wonders who pays for the latest wars, it's the poor, my friends, the poor, with their bodies as well as their pocketbooks. As Trudell says, the Third World War has already started. It's against the poor. Crazy Horse, we hear what you say. One earth, one mother. One does not sell the earth the people walk upon. We are the land. How do you sell our mother? How do we sell the stars? How do you sell the air? Possession, a war that doesn't end. Material fields, material harvests. Crazy Horse, we hear what you say. We are the seventh generation.
Home is a kind of a heart word. And I think it could be said, in the end, the only home anyone finds is in the depth of the heart, not to in any way deny the plight of the homeless or the increasing disparity in the culture. They have it down to now 65 people. The wealth of 65 people is equal to what? 70% of the rest of the people in the culture. The greatest disparity known in the history of this culture and most Western cultures. And what happens when there's disparity is the heart begins to break, because secretly everybody's in the same community, even though it's typical to deny it. The soul knows we all live together. And as the disparity gets greater, the incidence of serious illness, cancer, heart attack, happens at a greater amount because of the increasing disparity causes a kind of collective anxiety. And that increasing illness happens to both the rich and the poor, because when it comes to illness, everybody is equal, just the way when it comes to love, everybody is equal. This is Hafez. Homeless is what we always are whenever the heart is not fully alive. I would try to make this very clear. Love creates a home wherever it is. Love is never lost. Love is always in a state of being found. So that's one idea. And then the other one I was thinking of in terms of perhaps if everybody just had a home outside, we could get to being busy about finding the home inside. Because humans are the children of the earth, and if we can't find a home inside ourselves, then the earth itself is having a homeless experience. Here's how Rumi says it. Listen, a secret turning within us makes the universe turn. Walk to the well and drink. Touch the one you love, and turn as the earth turns. Turn as the moon turns, circling around what they love. The divine moves between two poles and in our own deaths. Listen, a secret turning within us makes the earth turn, the moon turn, and the universe turn. That's what he says. I'm sticking with him.
I think when you think about what we carry inside and what we try to bring out, we were actually talking in the green room about guns. And I used to carry guns. I used to think that guns were going to protect me. I used to think that I can resolve anything with a gun. And I haven't had guns in must be 40 years now. I haven't needed guns. Because I knew one thing when I did have one, more violence would come my way. And I think it's important to know that if you don't have guns and you feel insecure, go inward. Go to a place in which other arms are used. Because I'm still in an armed revolution. But the arms now are poetry, song, story, beautiful moments between people. You know what I'm saying? Make it expand the whole idea of what an armed revolution is. Because to me, that's more powerful than an actual literal gun in one's hand. And I'm going to do a poem that we have done together, me and John, and I think it's a good one because it's about the demonization that sometimes people go through. And I know as a young man, and I'm older now, I know that's like many years removed, but I never forget those years. They never leave me in the gang, in the streets. Always Running stayed with me even when the book came out. And when I wrote Always Running, people aren't aware that I was actually drinking a lot, and I was actually not all there. But the poems and the stories came out, flooded. I cried, I got mad, I walked away, I came back, and I knew that it was the healing that I needed to eventually, the year the book came out, to stop drinking completely and stop all the nonsense. And it took that opening just to be open to that story. So this poem is about not accepting those labels that people put on people, especially young people. Those labels that we hear all the time. I have a podcast with my wife, Trini, called the Hummingbird Cricket Hour. And today, with the second podcast, look it up on YouTube, iTunes, and wherever you can find out. We had our two youngest sons there. And it was amazing because those two young boys are amazing, beautiful geniuses. Everyone has a genius. And theirs has blossomed quite a lot. And we talked about how sometimes older men can have a lot of vitality and imagination and newness, and young people can carry a lot of wisdom and a lot of old things, a lot of old ideas. And so this poem is about don't misjudge young people. Don't call them dumb and inexperienced and can't figure it out. They know more than you think they know. Piece by piece, they tear at you, peeling away layers of being, lying about who you are, speaking for your dreams. In the squalor of their eyes, you are an outlaw, dressing you in a jacket of lies, tailor-made in steel. You fit their perfect picture. Take it off. Make your own mantle. Question the interrogators. Eyeball the death in their gaze. Say you won't succumb. Say you won't believe them when they rename you. Say you won't accept their codes, their colors, their putrid morals. Here you have a way. Here you can sing victory. Here you are not a conquered race, perpetual victim, the sullen face of the thunderstorm. Hands, minds, they're carving out a sanctuary. Use these weapons against them. Use your given gifts. They are not stone. Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to read something someone wrote in the Huffington Post back 6 months ago or a year. It's called "It Takes More Than a Village." A society is playing with fire when it neglects the needs and desires of its young people. Not only are natural talents wasted, but a sense of desperation grows in the shadows. Young men in particular can feel driven to desperate acts if they do not feel welcome in society and valued for who they are in their essence. Most people have heard the old African proverb that it takes a village to raise a child. Few know that the second part of the proverbial statement suggests that if young people are not fully invited into life, they will burn the village down. A society is playing with fire if it denies that the dreams of its youth in favor of the status quo that offers some and excludes others. What happens to a dream deferred, asks the poet Langston Hughes over 60 years ago in a poem simply called Harlem. More than half a century later, the dream is still deferred. The site is Baltimore, and the prophetic voices of the poet still asks what happens when another generation of dreams becomes deferred. Does it sag like a heavy load? or does it explode? These are extreme times during which the growing disparity in terms of wealth and opportunity adds fuel to the fires of despair every day. Laws and rules may tell us how to live, but a person must have a why to live. In the soul of America, the why to live has been best imagined as a dream, not the simple American dream of blind materialism, but the wild complexity of dreams trying to live through the great diversity of souls that makes up the America that has not yet been. He wrote it.
You know Langston Hughes, the brilliant poet. I think of it every time I watch the Republican presidential or very unpresidential debate. Let America be America again, the America that never yet has been. You know, that's what we're waiting for, not make America great again. He actually says, the America that thinks it was great never was. And it's the America that has not yet been that's great. And of course, we know a forest can only live through its diversity, and a culture is a forest of dreams. Diversity is necessary to it. It cannot be great unless all the dreams have a chance, you know, just echoing Langston Hughes. In the meantime, we have to live through what we're living through, which you could say is a collapse of imagination. We have the World Wide Web, which has everybody really connected 24 hours a day horizontally. But what makes culture is verticality, the height of imagination and a depth of feeling. That's what makes a culture. And so we have traded, kind of maybe unwittingly, a horizontal connection rather than the verticality that allows human imagination to make a cathedral in the midst of a city, or the human imagination that can descend to the depths and pull up, you know, deep feelings and emotions that are enough to connect everybody. Repeating what was said earlier, when people are polarized and can't meet, it's because soul has been lost. So this is Goethe. This has happened before. It may be helpful to know that. This is Goethe writing quite a long time ago. Tell a wise person or else keep silent, for the masked man will mock it right away. He's talking about the pain we have or the concerns we have or even the dream we have. Tell a wise person or else keep silent, for the Tea Party will mock it right away. Tell a wise person or else keep silent, for the Trump supporters will mock it right. I can't, you know, he was seeing this ahead of time. It's happened before. I praise what is truly alive, what longs to be burned to death. In the calm waters of the love nights, where you were begotten, where you have begotten, a strange feeling comes over you when you see the distant candle burning. Listen. When you dream, you are no longer caught in the growing obsession with darkness, and a desire for higher lovemaking sweeps you upward, and then distance does not make you falter, and then arriving in magic, flying, and finally insane for that light, you are the butterfly and you are gone. And so long as you have not experienced this, to die and so to grow, you are only a troubled guest on the dark earth. So this is that old idea, we're here to die repeatedly because it's the only way to grow. And in a sense, the culture is dying, kind of. And so on one hand, that's very disturbing. On another hand, it may be the only way it can grow. So we ready for a story? This is a story from a very small tribe in South America. And it's a story about what happens when the world is destroyed. There are a lot of stories and cultures throughout the world about the world coming to an end and starting again. And so from a mythological point of view, the world can't end. That's not the problem. The world renews. The problem is, how do we live when many things are ending and it's hard to find where the renewing energy is? This is a story about that. So once upon a time, not in this time, but in some other time, not in this place, but in some other place. It happened that everything became overheated and the rain refused to fall. And pretty soon everything was drying out, and then the air itself caught on fire, and soon after that all of the trees caught on fire and began to burn. And then the mountains began to melt, and soon enough all the beings, the animals, and even the humans that were living got caught in the conflagration, and they too were reduced to ash, and there was nothing left of the earth except the ashes that covered the earth in all directions, so that there was nothing that you could see except for ashes. And no one was left when that happened except for a couple of beings who happened to be in the other world when this world caught on fire. I hope you know that there's an other world right next to this world, and if you happen to be in that world, when this world catches on fire, you'll still be okay. And that's what happened to Ikanshu and Chuna, who were in the other world when this world was reduced to ashes. And then the two of them were longing for home. And so they started to fly, because they were kind of like bird beings. They were kind of like humans, but they're also kind of like bird beings, because this was a long time ago when humans could be animals and animals could be humans. It was in that time. And so they were flying the way birds were flying, but they were feeling the way people feel, because they wanted to be home. But no matter where they looked, all they could see was ashes, and they couldn't distinguish between the ashes in order to find home. And as they were flying in that fashion, the trickster, you know the trickster, he always survives. The trickster said, listen, when you find your index fingers pointing down, you will be above your home. I can't explain how they had wings and they were flying, and they also had index fingers. It's an old story. These things were happening at the same time. And so now Ikanshu and Chuna were flying with their wings and their fingers and everything, and soon enough their fingers began to point down. And so they descended into the ashes. And when they landed in the ashes, they realized they were back on Earth. And as soon as they were back on Earth, they became hungry, because that's what happens to people on Earth. And so they began to look for food, but there was nothing but ashes. And Ikanshu was kicking in the ashes in hopes of stirring something up to eat, when his foot hit something hard. And he reached down and he pulled out of the ashes what turned out to be a piece of charcoal. And he held it in his hand, standing there in the ashes at the end of the world. And he realized you can't really eat charcoal. But then he had a kind of a vision, and he remembered that charcoal was a remainder of trees. And then he had the thought that trees were also used to make drums, and so he decided that the piece of charcoal was his drum. And so Ikanshu, standing in the ashes at the end of the world, began to play that piece of charcoal as if it was a drum. And he was drumming away in the ashes at the end of the world, when he thought, as long as I'm drumming, I might as well dance. And so he began to dance in the ashes and thought, as long as I'm dancing, I may as well sing. And so now Ikanshu was in the ashes that were the remainder of the entire world, playing his charcoal drum, singing and dancing. And he did that until he exhausted himself, and he fell down in the ashes. And there he fell asleep, as all people do after a good dance or a good song or even a good musical opportunity. And we will leave him there, sleeping in the ashes at the end of the world, until we ourselves come back again to this story later. So it's the ashes, and it's an old idea. It appears in European fairy tales. It appears in Native American stories. This happens to be South American Native stories. The ashes times. And it's one way to understand it. Part of the purpose of stories and poetry and symbolic language is to give us a way to understand something that seems overwhelming. And so I find it helpful to think that we're in the ashes time, when many things are reduced to ash. There are whole countries reduced to ash. There are banking systems reduced to ash. The stock market got close to that today. We're in the time when the swings are really big, right? Remember 20 years ago, if the stock market went down 500 points, people jump off buildings. Now it's happened several times. And so we're in that big, they used to call it apocalypsis, the period of collapse and renewal happening at the same time. But it's valuable to think of it as the ashes. A lot of people winding up in the ashes, a lot of things winding up in the ashes. It's also helpful to know people have lived through it before, That's a function of stories, to say we've been here before, in the ashes. Any ashes poems, Louis?
So we have a lot of diversity. We have a lot of belief systems. We have a lot of things that distinguish us, which is not bad at all. But we also have some commonality. And one of the commonality that I know that we all share, regardless of where we come from, regardless of how we've been taught, regardless of race, ethnicity, whatever, is we have the commonality of loss. All of us have suffered loss. Some deeper than others, but everybody has this. Maybe the loss of even the dream, the loss of an expectation. All of us have been betrayed somewhere, abandoned somehow, or even traumatized at some level. And this actually makes us human to each other, because we can even see the loss in our eyes. We can hear it in our voices. We can hear it when people just stand there. You could see it. And the ones that are the most lost sometimes are the ones that have that mask that says, I'm not hurting, I'm not in pain, I don't suffer nothing. And you can see how much they're really suffering. So I want to read a poem about being in that place of loss, in the ashes, after things have burned down and all of us feeling that devastation. But this is one that says that, you know what, that's one thing that ties us together. We have to find another commonality, right? But right now, let's recognize that commonality, because that brings us all as one. One lifetime meets another lifetime in a constant lifetime of wars. Leaning cities greet us at every station, and every wound points to the same place. If your unique pain cancels out my unique pain, then there's nothing unique about pain. What's left to do but carry your troubles to where they're going? Once there, you stumble on the rest of us.
Yeah. Thank you. William Stafford. A story that could be true. If you were exchanged in the cradle and your real mother died without ever telling the story, then no one knows your name. And somewhere in the world, your father is lost and needs you, but you are far away. He can never find how true you are, how ready. When the great winds comes and the robberies of rain, and you stand on the corner shivering, people who go by, you wonder at their calm. They miss the whisper that runs any day in your mind. Who are you really, wanderer? And the answer you have to give, no matter how dark and cold the world around you is, maybe I'm a king.
So I study stories from all different cultures, and in India, where they have a lot of deities, first of all, basic idea, why just have one god? I mean, why not get some diversity going? So they have a lot of gods and goddesses, and they all have 8 arms. It's quite exciting. And then they have like 37 creation stories, not like one Bible story, it's like many. So they have a god called Prajapati. And Prajapati decided to make the world from the abundance of creativity that was inside the divine to begin with, from the abundance of beauty, from the generosity of spirit, from the flowering of all possibility. Prajapati made the world with everything in it. And after it was over, Prajapati had like a major postpartum depression. And Prajapati felt empty and scared and isolated and alone. And so we made the world again from sorrow, from isolation, from fear, from loneliness, from sadness. And so the idea is, if you're going to be a poet, if you're going to be a creative person of any kind, and everybody has some creativity in them, that you don't wait for the abundant moment. You don't wait for the fullness. Emptiness makes a lot of poetry. Sadness makes a lot of beauty. Loss makes a lot of renewal. This is Antonio Machado. The wind one brilliant day called to my soul with an odor of jasmine. In return for the odor of my jasmine, I'd like the odor of your roses. He answers, I have no roses. All the flowers in my garden are dead. The wind says, well then I'll take the withered petals and the yellow leaves and the waters of the fountain. And the wind left, and I wept, and I said to myself, what have you done with the garden that was entrusted to you? And the idea is we've all been given a garden. We may have been born the poorest person of all. We may have been born with an illness or a wound. We may have been born an orphan. But inside the heart, we have a garden that was given to us. And it's our job to grow that garden, even if we grow it with sorrow, even if we grow it with tears that water the flowers. It's our garden. We have to give birth to our garden, regardless of the intensity of the world or the devastation that we experience. That's the old idea. What have you done with the garden that was entrusted to you?
For the summoning?
Where are we?
For the summoning?
Are we singing?
Yeah.
Oh, all right. So, we thought we would sing. Right now, we just thought we would. So there's a Spanish proverb that says, bad people have no song. So you don't want to wind up in that group. And most cultures, people have song for any occasion. Every occasion has a song. And so one of the big losses in the modern world is we don't have shared stories typically, and we don't have shared songs. Because sometimes the only harmony that can be found is in song. Sometimes music is the only harmony. And as we all know, music is healing. And so when you have shared music and a kind of an agreement in the harmony of songs, healing occurs, and it brings the soul back, and it makes it more possible for people even with different points of view to work at things together. So this is a song from West Africa, from the Dogara people, from whom I got this drum, by the way. I mean, they gave it to me. I didn't steal it. And so this is a song that they would use on an occasion when they want everybody to come together. And it calls on the ancestors, which is another old tradition you find throughout the world. The idea, the ancestors are those who have done this before us. They lived before us. And they don't completely disappear. They live as souls in the other world. And they have an interest in this world. The idea that we're born and then we suffer and we die, that's a modern idea. It's a misunderstanding of how the continuity of soul was there before birth, all during life, and it's there again after death. That's the old idea. We're wrapped in a big story that's being carried even by the ancestors. And so they call directly on the ancestors and say, nobody knows what to do right now. Can we have some inspiration from the ancestors? So we'll sing it, and we'll invite you to sing along. And this is not, it's not the voice. Like, you don't have to have a good voice. It's more like a choir of frogs, You listen to the frogs, half of them sound really bad. But, they give it their all, and so it's like that. You don't have to have rhythm. The idea is to breathe into the song, sing into the song. And it's so old you can't hurt it. So it sings to the male ancestors and the female ancestors, those being the main two types. Ora samne, ora samne. Ora sameo, ora sameo, ora mamne, ora mamne, ora mamneo.
Ora samne o. Ora samne o. Ora mamne. Ora mamne. Ora mamne o. Ora mamne o.
You get the feeling for it? Pora Samani. Pora means praise. Sa means sire, male ancestor. Many means much. Pora ma, mom, grandmother, female ancestor. Much praise to the female ancestors, standing at the very beginning of time with all of the eggs of humanity in their womb, ready to release the flood of life into history and beyond. Praise to those grandmothers, praise to those ancestors at the beginning, praise to the male ancestors standing at the very beginning with the spark of intelligence burning in their eye. May they come and inspire us in these times of darkness. Praise to those ancestors. Praise to the ancestral energy in each one of us. Praise to all of them. Are you ready to sing it? You might not have another chance to sing tonight. This might be your last chance. You don't know. Pura samane. Pura samane. Ora samne o. Ora samne o. Ora mamne. Ora mamne. Ora mamne o. Ora mamne o. So we're going to fade the drums out, but keep the song going so we can hear the voices. Ora samne. Join in. Ora samne. Ora samne o. Ora samne o. Ora mamne. Ora mamne. Ora mamne. Ora mamne o. Ora mamne o. Sounds good. Now, ancient songs like these songs have a purpose. You can aim them. So when you're singing, if you think of someone you know who's in trouble, or even if you came into the room concerned about someone who's in trouble, you sing the song and send it to them. It's so old, this song, it can go anywhere. No roaming charges, anywhere. And so the old idea about a prayer is we never just pray for ourselves. We have to be praying for others as well. So we know it's the ashes time. So just think of someone who's in the ashes, or even if you don't know someone, we know right outside this building there are homeless people right outside here. And so we send the song to them. It's a protection song. It's a healing song. So let's try it again. It's starting to have feeling in it, and that makes it work. Pura samne. Pura samne. Pura samne o. Pura samne o. Last verse is to the grandmothers. Always sing to the grandmothers at the end, because everyone who came into this world, male, female, everyone came into the womb of a mother. The womb is remembered at the end because it is the beginning. Last verse to the grandmothers. Pura mamne. Pura mamne. Pura mamne o. Pura mamne o. Thank you. Thank you for singing. Where are we now?
Well,
What are we doing?
I got a poem.
Okay.
The interesting thing, actually, there's all these tough gangs in LA. There's some pretty tough gangs. LA's got some pretty big ones. There's actually one well-known tough gang called Cantaranas. It means singing frogs. So you get all kinds. One of the things I think is important to point out is how, in spite of all the loss and the devastation, there's a seed of something beautiful within all that. It's important, we were talking about, and back there again, how these big fires that have destroyed a lot of the acreage around here. But even Mount St. Helens, where the devastation that Mount St. Helens brought, and somebody even mentioned Chernobyl. What they found out after all these years, it's all coming back, but they've even found new plants, new species that had never existed before coming back. It's amazing how nature regenerates, how it finds its renewing, how it finds its imagination, how it gets deep enough in its own soul and brings that out to the world. It's in nature. And the problem about being our institutionally run society, capitalism, the world that we're in, is that we get removed from nature, and then other people tell us what is the real nature of things, and they're not. Mortgages, they're just a lie. Wage systems, it's all a lie. Borders, all made up. But we all dying and killing each other for these things that are made up. The scarcity that's in the world, everywhere we go. And so it really is important for us to know that things get reborn in spite of all the hurt. And no matter how deep and hurt and dark things are, in there is something beautiful. And I just wanted to share a couple other things. I've been able to go to some of the most violent places in the world because of the work that I do. Of course, Chicago, where I lived there for 15 years. And it's so devastating what's happening in Chicago. And it didn't have to be that way. Same in LA, same in other cities. I was in El Salvador many times, several times. And one time I went there to visit 7 prisons and some of the worst dungeon prison worlds that you can imagine. And guess what I found there? The peacemakers. I found the poets. I found the artists sitting in those cells. I went to Ciudad Juarez, where we lived when I was born. At the time that I went there, it was the murder capital of the world. Terrible devastation. The women were being killed for so long, but that was being pushed out for all the other murders related to the drug wars. And I'm going to tell you something. That drug war, that homelessness is not a natural thing. That is human-made. That's a policy thing. That's our neglect. But I went down there, and guess what? The violence in Juarez is actually going down. I spent 2 weeks there telling people, go to your art. Go to your beauty. Go to the bounty that's inside every one of us. And now they say that there's music and there's art galleries, and people are beginning to take over some of the neighborhoods with art. I can't say it's my idea. It's not. It's nature's. And I'm just trying to align something to nature and how it works. So I want to do this poem about when a poet appears and the power that it brings to all of us. When a poet appears, the earth springs into song, flowered with new hope. A bright beginning even from a terribly seeded past where dust and stones are bare sowing ground. Poets know there's a design to their lives, braided with threads of the future. They don't just make and remake language, they're called to it, just as a solid and direct line can become fleeting or slanted. Aspiring to be a poet, you become a poet, turning what's possible into what's next. Not just creating a nest for oneself made of familiar sounds that keep one comfortable, not just basking in the spotlight or the imagined power, but by cultivating words with courage, discipline, and ferocity, poets carry this sacrifice with grace. Always remember the unrecoverable moments with loved ones, with family, while also giving to the whole, even at the expense of one's time, one's considerations. All proper sacrifices are rooted in the sacred. blessed and cursed, loved and hated, seen well or lied about. No poet can escape the human energies that both destroy and lift up. Yet true poets are matched for this challenge. There is a poet seed planted before birth and carefully nurtured by angels, by elements, by the alignments of universal sway. You feel this in the bones. Somewhere the message is, I was meant to be here. The fact is, poetry is in everyone. It emerges from the human seed. Yet, as deeper truths go, poets see farther and feel deeper. Just like the rest of us, only maybe more. Turning time into learning, into passion, into revelation. They bargain with God for how to be in this world. Learning for learning, passion for passion, revelation for revelation.
So we're climbing out of the ashes a bit, beauty pulling us. And this is a poem by Etheridge Knight. He's an African-American poet who wrote a lot of stuff in prison, actually. And this was for his daughter. He finally saw her when she was 14, and she was kind of angry, and he wrote this poem. I think it really captures the feminine spirit. And I framed it, blew it up and framed it and gave it to my daughter when she was 14. Circling the daughter. You came to be in the month of Malcolm, and the rain fell with the fierce gentleness like a martyr's tears on the streets of Manhattan when your light was lit, and the city sang you welcome. Now I sit trembling in your presence. 14 years have brought the moon blood, the roundness, the girl giggles, the grand leaps. We are touched tender in our fears. You break my eyes with your beauty. Oh, baby, I love you. Do not listen to the lies of old men who fear your power, who preach that you were born in sin. A flower is moral by its own flowering. Reach always within for the music and the dance and the circling. O Tondi way, my beloved of this land, your spring will come early, and when the earth begins its humming, begin your dance with men, with a grin and a grace of whirling. Your place is neither ahead nor behind, neither right nor left. The world is round. Make the sound of your breathing a silver bell at midnight and the chilling wet of the morning dew.
Beautiful. Beautiful. In the strange way of poetry and music and inspiration, I was thinking of Etheridge while I was listening to Louis.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, so that totally caught me. Etheridge and I used to do, that was great. We used to do events together, and Etheridge would stand up and he would say, "The words from my mouth move the bones in your ears and change the shape of your soul." And he's technically correct. The resonance actually vibrates and moves those bones. Remember, there's like a horse in there with the stirrup and all that, and then the horse takes the words and runs all inside, and the poem comes alive. And poet Etheridge, I remember we used to go pick him up in the hospital. He was so sick, and he had a number of his organs taken out. He was losing his organs year by year, and he could barely walk. But once he got on stage, he would stand up and throw those poems out. The poems replaced his organs. They replaced his muscles. It was an amazing thing to see. So thank you for bringing Etheridge in. I also thought of Aimé Césaire. This is called Notebook of a Return to the Native Land. And what Etheridge is saying about the words being real. Language is a real thing. It is not something that anybody can hold on to. Words are being born through people. Through proper speech, through poetry, We make language alive in the world. Language is a genuine thing. It is the thing that humans make. And just as in the beginning was the word, our job is to keep making language live in the world. This is how Aimé Césaire says it. I would rediscover the secret of great communications and great combustions. I would say storm, I would say river, I would say tornado, and I would say leaf. I would say tree. I would be drenched by all rains and moistened by all dews. I would roll like frenetic blood on the slow current of the eye of words, turned into mad horses, into fresh children, into clots, into vestiges of temples, into precious stones remote enough to discourage all miners. And whoever would not understand me would not understand any better the roaring of a tiger. The tiger roars. Language is our roar.
Sorry?
Oh. Shall we finish the story? Does everybody know how it turns out? Well, you could figure we're here and we're sitting on seats in a building, so something might have come out of the ashes. You could guess. Anyway, that's where we left it, right? Ikanchu had fallen asleep in the ashes that was all that remained of the world. And eventually, he awakened from the sleep, and I guess the day had come back. And as he awakened, laying there in the ashes, he looked around quickly for a little piece of charcoal, for it's the only thing he had. And as he saw it, the charcoal laying there in the ashes, he saw a tiny green tendril growing out of that black charcoal. He saw something green growing out of that darkness that seemed to be death itself, and he immediately understood what had happened. And so he got up again, and he began to dance around that piece of charcoal, singing to it. And as he danced around it and sang to it, the tendril began to grow, and it grew up towards the light, and it grew larger and larger, and until it looked like the trunk of a tree. And then from that little tendril, there grew branches that stretched out in all directions, and onto the branches there came leaves. It was a wondrous thing. Ikanchu dancing and singing the tree of life back into life. And as he was dancing in that way, his foot hit something hard in the ashes again. He stopped and bent down and picked it up, and it was a rock that he found down there in the ashes. Now this may be surprising, especially if there's some environmentalists in the room. This could come as a shock, but Ikanchu, when he found that rock in the ashes, he took it and he threw it at the tree that had just grown from the tendril that had sprouted from the charcoal. And when the rock hit a branch of the tree that had just grown up out of the ashes, the branch fell off the tree and into the ashes. And no sooner did the branch hit the ashes than it turned into a tree as well. And it began to grow and spout more branches. And so Ikanchu kicked around until he found more rocks, and he kept throwing them at the tree of life. And each time he knocked a branch off the tree of life, it became a new species of trees that grew directly from the ashes. And soon enough, all the forests were growing back. And when the forest grew back, all the animals come back, and the birds came back. And after all the animals come back, the people began to come back. And pretty soon the whole world was teeming with beauty and life and all the things that everyone loves about the world. It was a great thing, and it all came from dancing in the ashes. It all came to singing to the charcoal. It all came from expressing oneself, whether it's beauty and fullness or emptiness and desolation. And every year, people that have this story get together, and they go to a place where the trees are ripe with fruit, and they pick up rocks and they throw it at the fruit, and the fruit falls, and they pick it up and eat it. And then if they have a disagreement with someone, they take some of the fruit and they spread it on that person, and that person takes fruit and spreads it on them until everybody's covered with fruit and everybody has gotten rid of all their disagreements. And then they begin to dance and sing like Ikanchu, and that's the way they say you keep the world going. As Louis would say, dance or die, dance or die, dance or die. I always feel bad about Tuna. There's two of them, Ikanchu and Tuna. Tuna's never mentioned. But the old idea is someone has to witness in order for something to be real. And so Tuna's like the original Buddhist. He just witnesses and meditates while Ikanchu does all the dancing. Someone has to witness. So I just say that because all the traditional people knew that. Something isn't real unless someone has witnessed it. And some people are natural, genuine witnesses. And all people need a witness to be reminded of how genuine they are.
Are we winding down?
I don't know where we are.
I think we're winding down, right?
We're winding down?
To
Okay.
get to
I was just
your
wrapping up, but
a little dialogue. Well, actually, it is that way. Because I think the
We got-
dialogue with you is going to be important.
We got 5.
We got 5? Oh,
I think
good.
so.
well, that's pretty good.
Okay.
What?
So what I want to do then is a poem that has to do with a lot of what we're talking about. Coming out of a city like LA, which is actually, people are aware, has had more civil disturbances in the last 100 years than any other city in the U.S. And there's a reason for it. I always call it the end of the line. Where else are you going to go? You know, when you hit LA, it's the ocean, so then you have to battle things out here. And so I have a poem that I wrote for LA as part of my poet laureate thing, and it's going to be in the LA Public Library's weblog, hopefully in the next few days. Hope you look it up. I have a weblog there. The sad thing about it is that as poet laureate, I've been all over the city, and I've done more than 100 events in the last year. Schools, with kids, with adults. I've done libraries. I've done book fests. I've done community festivals. I've done graduations, all these events, and I can't get any media. It's really weird. The LA Times has not done a story. And it's really funny because I always tell people, if I had shot somebody, they would be there right away, Again, I'm glad I don't have any guns, but but the idea is it's really sad that we can't, and it's not about me, it's about these kids. It's about those people who are finding poetry in their lives, who are coming alive. Las lunas locas. It's about the people who are just taking the language and taking it with them and opening up hearts and opening up minds and opening up dreams. And so I have this poem. I'm not going to read the whole poem. I'm just going to read the last part. And I hope someday it will appear somewhere. I can't get it published yet, but I'm going to get it somewhere. And it goes like this. This is the last part. There you go. Graffiti poems. I love LA. I can't forget its smells. I love to make love in LA. It's a great city, a city without a handle. The world's most mixed metropolis of intolerance and divisions. How I love it, how I hate it. Zoot Suit riots, can't stay away. City of hungers, city of angers. Ruben Salazar, Rodney King. I like to kick its face in. Bone City, dried blood on walls, wildfires, taunting dove whales, car fumes and oil derricks, water thievery, with every industry possible in still a one industry town, lined by those majestic palm trees, and like its people, with solid roots, supple trunks, resilient.
Okay. Well, I'll give you a little something. Do-do-do-do-do.
Microphones out here when you guys are ready.
We have what?
Microphones.
For the key.
Not quite. Well, I just got into town about an hour ago. And took a look around, see which way the wind blows. Are you a lucky little lady in the city of light, or just another lost angel? City at night, L.A. woman, you're my woman.
All right. I'm not going. So, you guys covered the LA thing.
So let's say thank you for being here, listening to us, and singing, taking part, and sharing. And now we want to hear from you.
Hello and thank you. Since you're older than me, I'd like to know what you know about LA from the past that may like to try and bring alive again in our future?
Well, my mom rode the red car. I know that. Which the automotive industry took away.
I would have to go further. When the Tantavium and the Tongva people were here, and they walked this earth in peace with nature, and they tried to live in harmony with the world. I think we need to get back to that. And I'm not saying get rid of all people that are here. I'm not about that. But I'm saying we can go back to what people understood was the proper relationship with nature, with each other, and with our dreams.
And I would add that like those plants that when it gets really hot burst into flower and rise and no one even knew they were there are stories in this earth. People are walking on the stories of the ancient people all the time, not just the bones, but the story bones are down there too. There are stories in this land that are waiting to be refound. Places like Los Angeles have stories hidden in the ground, stories about how to live here. Remember, most people came from somewhere else. We're still visitors. And they say that you need at least 10 generations of people to die in the land before you belong there. So we haven't even, I don't think, hit that yet. But in the meantime, it's getting so heated that maybe those stories could come up. We could be listening for those ancient stories to rise from the land. The land has stories.
Hi, I'm Cynthia. I'm with Las Lunas. I had a question for all of you about what you said about the internet connecting us on a horizontal level, which I completely agree. And then that was the first time I've heard about the culture we need cultural growth and that happens vertically, but we've kind of given up on that. And so I just wanted a question for the whole group of what advice do you have about cultural growth? Or what can we do to move vertically, right? That we're not already doing. So I just want to hear what you have to say about that.
Now, one thing I would say is to trust our own intuitions, that we have an internet inside of us that's even deeper and bigger than that internet. And I do think that we carry all our lineage in our bones, in our marrow, in our DNA. And it's learning to tap into that. I think there's power and energy and ideas and great imagination. It's abundant, it's inexhaustible. If we could learn to go back to that. I think what it does, though, it gives us knowledge versus just information. Knowledge that we can actually discern and figure things out. Figure out what is just being thrown at us, what is frivolous, what is not all that big. You know how much drama there is in our lives, and we make big things out of little things, but somehow the knowledge that says this is what's substantial, this is what's important, and these other things are not.
I acquiesce to my teachers.
You know, it's hard to imagine sometimes when we feel so small in the face of big issues, or our heart gets broken by someone. But the deepest power of the human soul is imagination. It's really the thing that makes us fully human. And so the vertical up imagination is the capacity, how do you say it? A human being is really a channel standing between what used to be called heaven, the heights of glory or the heights of beauty, and the depths of the earth. Again, we have Lorca in the room. Lorca, who wrote about
Duende.
Duende.
Yeah.
So, back to Lorca. Duende is the dark, knowing spirit of the earth that tries to rise into the world in order to adjust the imbalances, and it can only rise through the souls of people, souls of people, and it's the only way it can get into the world. And so humans are the vehicle of grace coming down, the vehicle of Duende, the spirit coming up. We are that. The children, we're the only living people who can do anything about the world. I don't mean just the people in this room, but we are the ones living now. And our job is to channel the grace down, the Duende up. And then the other thing is the soul longs for community. That's why we come here tonight. We come to be in, the Latin word is communitas, to be in a place together where we feel soulfully connected and we can hear something sacred, like a poem, like a song, and feel the opening of our own hearts. And the only way that community is made is from a deep unity that descends so deep that it pulls everybody together. And so this verticality is where we find both soul that goes down and spirit that goes up. And it's our natural inheritance to be standing in the lineage of grace and in the prominence of Duende rising. That's our heritage.
Yeah.
And this is our last, we have time for.
Oh, okay. This is for Mr. Rodriguez. I've just been introduced to your work today, and it's just so powerful and so moving. And I just wanted to know if there was something that happened in your life, like if there was a catalyst that moved you from the poet as a witness to someone who shares your art in the world. Thank you.
Okay, we got another hour? Let me just say, and there's a lot of things, but I wanted to say one thing. I remember I was in that gang. I was totally suicidal, homicide. I totally thought that my whole life meaning was that little 5 areas, blocks of my neighborhood, and I was going to die for that neighborhood, and I was going to kill for that neighborhood. Nothing else mattered. But you know, I lost a lot of friends by the time I was 18 years old, 25 of them. Everybody was dying, but I wasn't. People were getting shot, heroin addictions, a couple of suicides, cops killed 4 of my friends. It got to be like, but I wasn't dying. I wanted to die with them. I thought the best day of my life would be my funeral, where everybody would finally love me and everybody would miss me. I really did. I thought, I can hardly wait for that day, but I wasn't dying. And I think there was one thing one of my mentors told me. He felt that I was probably, without knowing it, the angriest and hungriest of all the guys. And I didn't know this. I didn't think about it. I didn't think I was angry. There's some rageful people in the neighborhood. But he says you were angry because you didn't want this life. And 2, I was hungry because I wanted something new, something different. And I think that was the catalyst when I woke up and realized my anger and my hunger is going to get me through this world, and it's in all my poetry. Thank you.